Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a really cool experiment in Rotterdam that's trying to build the city of tomorrow literally one house at a time. It's called the Concept House Village, and honestly, it might just hold some of the keys to our urban future.
So, let's start with a big question. We all say we want greener, smarter cities, right? So, why is it so incredibly hard to actually get there? I mean, we've had the technology for things like energy-neutral homes for years, but our big plans always seem to hit a wall when they meet the real world. Turns out, even with the absolute best intentions, our attempts often fall short. And to understand why, you really have to look under the hood at the building industry itself. It's not some simple, well-oiled machine. Nope, it's more like an incredibly complex puzzle, with a ton of moving pieces that just don't seem to want to fit together. So this kind of breaks down the chaos into three main problems. First, the industry is just completely fragmented. You've got architects, engineers, construction crews, policymakers. All of them depend on each other, but they're often pulling in totally different directions. Second, a building isn't like a car that rolls off an assembly line. It's a messy collection of complex systems, heating, plumbing, electrical, all with their own lifespans. That makes mass production almost impossible. And finally, you've got this tangled web of conflicting policies. Building codes might say one thing, while energy policy is pushing for something else entirely. It really is like a dysfunctional orchestra where everyone's playing from different sheet music. And all that led to this massive, fundamental problem. See, early on, these big demonstration projects for sustainable housing in the Netherlands uncovered a critical flaw, and this quote just nails it. Designers would install these brilliant, high-tech, energy-saving systems, but the people living there, they either didn't use them right or they just flat out didn't like them. You know, a perfectly engineered ventilation system is totally useless if the family thinks it's too loud and just turns it off. So you had these brilliant ideas failing simply because they didn't work for real people in their actual day-to-day lives. Okay, so clearly the old way of doing things was broken. This constant cycle of failure actually led to a breakthrough idea for how we can test and develop new solutions for our cities. It was time to move away from that top-down approach to something way more collaborative. And that idea is the living lab. Instead of cooking something up in a sterile laboratory and then just hoping it works in the messy real world, the living lab flips the script. The core idea is simple, but it's also revolutionary. You bring everyone to the table, the researchers, the companies, the government, and this is the most important part, the actual users. And you have them create and test things together, right there in a real-life context.
Which brings us right back to Rotterdam, because one of the world's most ambitious building-focused living labs is located right there in the city's port area. It's called the Concept House Village, and it's a real, living neighborhood dedicated to prototyping the future of housing.
Here we are, looking down at Heesplaat, the neighborhood where this whole experiment is taking place. It's this small pocket of land. You can see it's totally surrounded by the massive Rotterdam port. Its unique history actually made it the perfect spot for something like this.
So the story of Heesplaat is pretty interesting. It started out in the early 1900s as this quaint little village for shipyard workers. But when the main shipyard shut down in '96, the area really went into a steep decline. By 2011, though, the city had a brand new vision to turn this old post-industrial landscape into a buzzing hub for innovation. It became the perfect testbed for revitalization.
And this right here is Concept House Prototype 1. It was one of the very first experimental homes they built in the village. This isn't just an idea on a blueprint, it's a physical place where real families live, testing out the latest tech in sustainable energy, water systems, and home automation. This really captures the new vision for Heesplaat. It's a place for building and testing the sustainable homes of tomorrow, today.
So, what exactly do they research in a village full of prototype houses? I mean, it's got to be more than just solar panels and good insulation, right? Well, yeah, they're looking at the entire system, from the technology all the way to human behavior.
And the research isn't just random. It's a really structured approach that they've broken down into three key areas. This lets them look at everything from how a person feels about living in the house, all the way to the long-term life cycle of the building materials themselves.
First up, and this is probably the most important bit, they focus on the human experience. They're asking questions like, how do people actually feel about all this new tech? Is this smart thermostat making your life easier, or is it just more complicated? How do your daily routines change? This is all about closing that gap between what designers think will happen and what actually happens in a real home. Second, they put the building itself under the microscope. from cradle to grave? Can they build with local or recycled materials? What are the most efficient ways to actually construct these things? And here's the big one. How do you create business models that make zero-energy homes profitable? This looks at the entire life cycle, making sure sustainability is baked in right from the very start.
And third, they monitor the raw, hard data. How is the technology actually performing? They gather all the numbers on energy and water use. They explore really cool concepts like sharing energy between neighboring houses. And they tackle the very real, very practical question of maintenance. Because let's face it, even the most brilliant system is a total failure if it breaks down all the time.
Now, all this research, it's not just sitting in a report on a shelf somewhere. It has led to this stunning variety of real-world prototypes, and each one is testing a different piece of the sustainability puzzle.
So on the left, you've got that prototype 1 from Delft University again. And on the right, that's the CHIBB prototype, which was built by students from Rotterdam University of Applied Sciences. These aren't just models. They are temporary, energy-neutral homes designed by university teams and their industry partners to test some pretty radical new ideas in a real-world setting.
And the innovation isn't just about brand new buildings, which is so important. What you're looking at here are concepts for retrofitting existing post-war apartment buildings to make them energy neutral. This is huge because for a lot of cities, the biggest challenge isn't building new stuff. It's upgrading the massive stock of older housing we already have.
But for a living lab to actually survive, it needs more than just a bunch of good ideas. It needs a sustainable business model. So how do you keep a project like this funded and growing for over a decade?
Well, the Concept House Village runs on this really clever innovation cycle. It all starts with something they call a quadruple helix, which is just a fancy way of saying they get 4 key groups in a room together: academia, industry, government, and the users. They set the direction. Then innovators come in and use the lab to run their experiments. After that, the village basically acts as a marketplace, showing off the results and connecting successful ideas with companies that can scale them up. And finally, they're always recruiting new partners to keep that cycle of innovation fresh and moving forward.
So, after more than a decade of all these experiments, what has the world actually learned from this unique village? What are the big takeaways for anyone out there trying to build a smarter, greener city?
Well, there are 4 huge lessons here. First, universities were absolutely crucial to get this thing off the ground. Second, you need that initial spark of public funding to act as a catalyst. Third, and this is a big one, creating a solid business model is really hard. They found that you need a mix of temporary experimental houses and permanent market value houses just to stay financially stable. And finally, a lab like this isn't for testing a single new light bulb. Its real power is in developing integrated, whole-house systems where everything works together.
And all of this leaves us with one last, kind of provocative thought. The Concept House Village proves that innovation doesn't have to happen in some distant corporate R&D lab. It can happen right here, on our own streets, with real people. So the question to you is, what problems could we solve if we started experimenting right where we live?